This is The Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh. All right. We got a hot one tonight. Always gives me great pleasure to hear that song, to sit in front of you, and to speak into this microphone. What about you?
I haven't strode my headphones here, so I'm flying blind.
I know you really love those Bose headphones, Josh. But
talk to me, Goose. It's not the Bose headphones. It's the 25-cent connector that you bought me.
Yeah, it probably was a few dollars on Amazon. Is that what it is?
That's
I think so.
It is.
Is it that?
Yeah.
Well, why does Bose make the stupid quarter-inch, or it's less than a quarter? It's
called proprietary.
Like less than an eighth of an inch or something like that.
I don't think they designed them with the idea of recording podcasts.
Well, I just need to find a single connection, or I don't even
just
know what
the cord.
it is. Just the cord.
Or maybe just maybe like a $6 one instead of a $1 one. That'd probably work. Sorry, I'll fly blind.
So today's topic, we're talking about alienation, and specifically parental alienation. As our listeners know, most of you know, if you're a new listener, welcome. Thanks for listening to The Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh. What's our motto, by the way?
What do you mean, what's our motto?
It's small firm.
Big fight.
Big fight.
Big fight.
Small talk. I got it all mixed up.
I don't know. I'm a small guy.
Small firm, small talk, big fight.
Small guy, big fight.
Anyway, so we do family law here. We do divorce cases and custody cases. And so we have a case. I want to get too specific. I want to keep it very general. But there's a case where parental alienation is being alleged by not just the other side, but by minor's counsel, an attorney for the child himself. And he's made a pretty... He's looks like he's going to develop, or has already thrown out there, the idea that there's some parental alienation going on. Now, let me read the definition of parental alienation first, and then we'll get into it. In the cases of parental alienation, it means steps, often planned and malicious ones, a parent takes to isolate the child or children from the other parent through words and conduct, and to create a division, estrangement, and even hostility between the victimized parent and child.
See, I think that definition is a little bit misleading.
Why is that?
Well, if I recall it correctly, you may have to refresh my recollection, but it says by conduct.
Conduct, it does.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's misleading because I believe that alienation also includes the lack of conduct.
Inaction?
Inaction, exactly.
Okay. Well, explain to our listeners how it is that inaction can also result in alienation.
I actually think it's probably one of the more common ways that alienation occurs, and I think it's also the reason why you get so many family law litigants that say, I haven't alienated my child. I haven't said anything about their father. I haven't said anything about their mother. I don't do those things, but what they're also not doing is correcting, even addressing whatsoever the behavior of their minor when their minor is saying things about their ex-significant other, right? And that inaction, the unwillingness to put their foot down and say, that's your mother, that's your father, I don't care who you think you are, right? You don't talk about them that way, right? Their unwillingness to put their foot down, I think, is in and of itself alienation.
I think that in the context that you're speaking about it, it's almost like the person that is doing the alienation is too blind to see that this inaction that you're talking about is really just bad parenting, as opposed to wanting to spite the other person. Right, and it's a competition to win something, which is tragic. Really,
I don't like to go to the bad parenting. Right, I will be a parent very soon.
Yes, congratulations.
And so I don't think that we should take that phrase lightly. But I think in certain situations, you have to call a spade.
Right.
Right. And I think that in some situations, it's not purposeful, right? They're not trying to alienate their kid. They're not trying to be a bad parent, but they are unwilling and unable to set aside the emotions that got them to the point that they already are.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the things that we tell our clients right when they walk in the door from the initial consultation is, look, there's two main things I say during consultations for family law. It's one, if there are kids involved, I don't care about any of the nonsense that went on between you and the other party. It's no longer about you. The child that's involved in this case, or the children that are involved in this case, did not ask to be part of this. Didn't ask to be brought in this world. Didn't ask to be part of your dispute. So I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. What are we going to do to make sure that these kids are taken care of? What are we going to do to make sure these kids have the opportunity to be successful? I don't care how many households it takes, right? If it takes 6 different households, it takes a village, right? I understand that. And so our clients need to understand that. The other thing that I tell our clients, and something that I've told 2 clients very recently, is that they do not hire us to tell them what they want to hear.
Right.
They hire us to tell them what they need to hear.
It was interesting because the other day, it was a couple days ago, you were talking to the office. I think you were in my office, but you were addressing everybody, and you were saying, you made a comment about personal injury and, appreciating, you have a new understanding for the world of personal injury because you believe that it's about responsibility and accepting responsibility. And that concept is very pervasive and important in what we do, not just in personal injury, but in family law too, right?
I think my comment was that the law generally has to do with responsibility.
Oh, is that what you said?
Yeah, because
just generally?
some of the themes that we use in our personal injury cases are often about the idea of responsibility.
Right.
And that, if you're going to open your doors to the public, then you also take the responsibility that comes along with those profits that you can earn potentially.
Right. But in family law...
In the context of family law, it's also about responsibility.
I agree.
And that responsibility is what I just touched on, which is the children didn't ask to be put in this situation. So take responsibility for the decisions that you and your ex-spouse or your ex-baby mama or whoever it is made. You have a responsibility to the child. And if that means swallowing your pride and dealing with whatever you need to deal with personally to make sure that they have an opportunity in this world to have the same privileges that you had growing up, that's what it takes.
What if you have...
I'm preaching.
That's okay. No. That's all right. This is the good fight. What if you have a child who genuinely resents one of the parents because of infidelity, and because of that infidelity, it destroyed the core of the marriage and resulted in the divorce that they are now in the middle of and never asked to be a part of, like you just said? But what if that resentment is so strong that they want nothing, absolutely nothing to do with that person?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really tough question. Okay. But it goes back to the basic standard in family law, right? Which is the best interest of the child. And if you're willing to rely on the research, the years and years and years of research that standard is based on, right? And you also rely on the basic assumption that it is the best interest of the minor to have a frequent and continuing relationship with both mother and father, regardless of infidelity, right? Just because you are not a good husband does not mean that you are not a good father or a good mother, right? So those two things are distinguishable. I think that if you are a great father, then you put the infidelity aside and you find a way to explain it to your child that your ex-wife's infidelity is not indicative of her ability to be a mother. And regardless of what he thinks about her infidelity, he needs to respect her as a person, at a minimum. Okay? Now, I understand that when you get a child, even if they're minor at a certain age, right, you get to 13, 14, 15 years old, they're now forming their own opinions, whether you like it or not, and that's more of an uphill battle. But I still think that as the parent, you owe a duty to your child to at least point them in the right direction and correct that behavior and address it at a very minimum. It can't go unchecked.
Yeah. So I guess the question really for me becomes, or is, at what point does wanting and needing to support your child in whatever they believe, whether it's real, fake, justified, unjustified, whatever the case may be, at what point does needing to do that become or should be overcome by what am I trying to say? What's the question here?
I think what you're trying to say is, when do you support your children and when do you tell them that they're wrong?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm asking.
I don't think that the charge as a parent is to support your child unconditionally. I think the charge as a parent is to guide your child unconditionally, right? And respect and have civil discourse with your child when it comes to certain situations. But at the end of the day, you're the parent, right? You're the parent, and you have a greater capacity to make decisions that a minor should not be making, right? So at age 13, age 14, the human brain has not developed enough to understand the long-term effects of a relationship or the lack thereof with a parent, right? At 13 years old, 14 years old, a 14-year-old girl doesn't understand that not having a relationship with her mom is going to have a long-term effect on her life. And so I think it's our jobs as parents to guide them and get them to understand that although you understand where they're coming from, you understand the emotions, you understand that they're hurt, right? You have their best interest in mind.
At what point does somebody look at a situation and say, okay, this is active alienation versus bad parenting versus just enabling, or this inaction that we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the spectrum? Do they get blurred a lot? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they get blurred a lot, but I think there's a reason why they get blurred a lot. I think that there is usually such a sour taste in the parent's mouth that they're unwilling to co-parent and address the issues. In many cases of alienation, that term could be stricken from the record completely if they were just willing to pick up the phone or send a text message to the other side and say, hey, look, I'm trying to get Billy to understand that he needs to have a relationship with you. It's not going on. What can we do together to get him to understand?
Co-parenting. Sounds like co-parenting.
I think that's
and
the
parents
goal, right?
should co-parent.
But what does that entails?
I agree.
That entails that the parties put their bullshit aside, right? There's my first curse word on the podcast.
Yours?
Yeah, I think that's the first time.
Congrats.
It requires that they put their own problems aside, okay, and care about their children, right? Put the children above their history is what it comes down to. And look, I understand that's easier said than done, but look, children are a blessing. There are so many people that can't have children.
Yep.
And so we need to treat them as such. And look, us as attorneys, especially family law attorneys, it's our job to take emotion out of cases and inject it when necessary. And clients make it very difficult sometimes to do that. But if it was easy, we talk about this all the time. If cases were easy, people wouldn't need attorneys, they do it themselves.
We don't need us. I think that one of the hallmarks of being a great person, never mind great father or great co-parent, but just a great person, is the ability to take whatever power or role you have or are in and to help others with it. And there's no more sacred a bond, in my opinion, than that of a parent and child. And so to tie it back to responsibility is the responsibility of a parent to guide their child or children to become good people. And if you have kids that especially if they're a teenager, are going through such a formative period of their life, you don't want that child to hate men or hate women or they have to learn how to respect somebody apart from their own personal beliefs and conviction. People are going to disagree every day.
And I think it always comes back, just in life generally, I think it comes back to empathy, right? And empathy is not to be confused with sympathy, right? Sympathy is feeling bad for people in their situations. Empathy is understanding people's situations and being able to address it. And I think that as attorneys, we need to have empathy for our clients and understand that everybody's fighting a tough fight, okay? And I think that as parents, we need to have empathy for what our children are going through during a divorce, right? A separation, a custody battle. But don't confuse that empathy with sympathy.
Yeah.
Right? You can't say, "Oh, Johnny, woe is you," right? I can't believe you have to go through this. This is my fault, so I'm going to allow you to run loose.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel bad. No, I understand this is a tough situation. How are we going to get through this together? How are we going to get through this as a family unit, even though we're in two different houses? And how are we going to make sure that little Johnny gets to go to college and lives a successful life?
So I think that we've learned that you can actually have a situation where there's alienation through inaction versus, like you said, right? Because the definition here is suggesting that it can only be done with action, right? And so I think that in both situations you can have alienation, and one isn't necessarily more egregious than the other.
Yeah, I just think they're harder to see, right? We're not providing a service if we are informing the public on what everybody knows is alienation, right? If mom's saying F dad and dad's saying mom's such a B, right? That's obvious alienation. It could hit you in the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the situations where dad hears the child say something, mom hears the child say something, and they don't do anything to rectify the situation.
Yeah.
That's the tough one.
Right. All right. Well, I think we've said enough about that topic. I look forward to many more topics on this show, whether it's regarding family law issues or personal injury issues. Maybe we'll do one on bankruptcy at some point.
Maybe.
All right. Thank you, my friend. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you all out there have a great week, depending on when you listen to this. Thanks for listening to The Good Fight with attorney Steve and Josh. We're signing off.